And after he looked at me, he looked at my scans, he looked at my wife, and he said, "Look, I don't know where you think you're going now, but you guys are going to the hospital and Dan needs to have surgery tomorrow." This experience taught me that the gratitude is actually in just being in the moment and welcoming the moment, whatever it is. Like Hashem had a plan for all this. I didn't. He said, "Dan, you're going to spend the next X amount of months wrestling with this, and then you're going to spend part of your life recovering from this." That's all Hashem, right? Gratitude is just recognizing that in this present moment, I'm exactly where Hashem needs me to be. And these are the challenges in front of me that I'm supposed to be handling. And not worrying so much about what's in the past and not worrying so much about what lies ahead. The healthiest thing I ever did was getting on that plane. Like most entrepreneurs, my self worth was tied up entirely with the success of the business. And having gone through the recession in 2008, the challenges around 2016, my own feeling about my own success took pretty big body blows. And so one of the things that making Aliyah did was just put a tiny bit of space, a little bit of pause between me and the success of the business. And that was the healthiest thing that's ever happened.
Shalom Aleichem, and welcome to Shtark Tank. Shtark Tank is a podcast about the challenges and opportunities of being a mentor in the workforce. Before we begin, a quick personal request to please leave a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. It really helps us grow our show and reach new listeners. So thank you for that. This week, we're doing a Chanukah special with my good friend, Dan Cohen, talking about his journey and some of the lessons about gratitude that he learned along the way. Dan is a friend, a mentor, a great person. He's a marketing specialist, which is not our conversation today in the nonprofit marketing space. So Dan, welcome to Shtark Tank, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. And as we would say in America, longtime listener, first time caller.
So you've been a big supporter of Shtark Tank from the beginning. You've helped with a lot of things. And the first time we actually spoke, we were doing a Google G Meet from a rehab hospital. We're gonna get that in a second, but maybe just to set up before you ended up in rehab, not drug rehab, but physical rehab. What was your life like? A little bit about your background, your professional background, your family, before we get into this journey that's you found yourself on.
Sure. I'll try to do a speed round. I grew up a conservative movement kid in Philadelphia. My entire Jewish identity was shaped by Camp Ramah and the United Synagogue Youth Program. I'm a Jewish day school dropout. I had some learning issues when I was young. But fast forward, I ended up getting involved in politics. And after a term in politics, I ended up in corporate public relations, working both for General Mills, the big cereal company, as well as a startup in San Francisco. And when I moved to San Francisco, I did a few of those cool startups. And then about 20 plus years ago, I started my own company to provide marketing and communication services for nonprofits, foundations, and even public agencies. And the goal was people who were trying to use communications to drive social change, using these amazing tools like the tools we're using right now, but to try to really do tikkun olam in any way that's possible. So been able to do that for 25 years. And 8 years ago, my wife and I decided to make Aliyah. And so we moved to Israel. We live in the town called Ra'anana, which is about as close to Israel as you can get without actually being in Israel. And we love it here. And I've been very fortunate that with my colleagues, I haven't had to miss a beat at work. So my team still sits in California. I sit here in Israel. I work West Coast American hours, so I work at night. And that's kind of a quick version of my journey. We'll talk about a lot of other stuff after that, but that's who I am and what I'm doing here today. And, honestly, it's been a joy to follow your path, taking this from a kernel of an idea all the way through now to well over 100 episodes. So I'm proud of you. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan. It's really been special, especially your cheerleading on the side has really given me a lot of strength. So that cheerleading is not stam. It comes from a very interesting place. So tell us a little bit about your first signs that something wasn't right with your back.
Well, I think the journey really starts in earnest on October 7th. Shortly after October 7th, I was out, like many people, trying to figure out what I could do in the world. And whether it was driving or delivering or other things to try to support our soldiers and our community, within a matter of a couple of days, all of a sudden, Hashem decided it was going to become hard for me to walk. And over the course of about 2 or 3 weeks, I went from being fully functional and working out multiple days a week to really not being able to walk. And after about 2 or 3 weeks of meeting with doctors and other things, I found myself schlepping on a Thursday night to try to get to a super duper back specialist. Literally couldn't walk from the car to the elevator, take the elevator upstairs to his office. And after he looked at me, he looked at my scans, and in about 5 minutes, he looked at my wife and he said, "Look, I don't know where you think you're going now, but you guys are going to the hospital and Dan needs to have surgery tomorrow. If not, he may never, or he may have serious challenges walking again." So it kind of went from 0 to 60 in just a few weeks. And I had to, come to grips with that. And thankfully, it was actually kind of a huge sense of relief because nobody understood what was going on. And we'll talk probably a little bit about what it was. But fundamentally, to get that sense of, okay, certainty, we're going to do something, we're going to do it right now, brought a huge measure of relief.
So what were those next few days and weeks like right after that initial shock?
Well, literally 12 hours later, I was getting surgery on at 5 in the morning. I was inside the MRI machine at 6:30. I was on the table, and by 8 or 9 o'clock, it was done, and I was back in a hospital room.
And so then after that, was everything all well and good?
Well, I thought it was going to be. I mean, when he originally told me about this, I was like, I'll be up and around by November, Thanksgiving, because this was probably early November. I said, Thanksgiving, I'll be home. It'll be no problem. And shortly after I came out of surgery, I think I realized how serious it was going to be. And a social worker came in and said, you're going to need to go to a rehabilitation hospital. And I didn't even kind of understand the extent of what would happen. But she said, yeah, you're going to go to the rehabilitation center and you're going to be there a long time. And it was incredibly disappointing. But again, just trying to understand like this was what it was going to be. She had to work hard to get me into a rehabilitation center because as you can imagine, shortly after October 7th, many of the rehab centers in Israel were full of soldiers or full of individuals who were recovering. So again, hand of Hashem, I found myself being sent to Tel Aviv to the Reut Rehabilitation Center just in South Tel Aviv, where I ended up staying for 90 days.
Wow. And this surprise that hit you that you need to go to a rehab hospital, was that due to the surgery not being successful all the way, or the surgery was 100% successful and you just didn't realize that this long rehab was part of the deal?
I think it's the second one. I don't think I had any clue what I was up against. I had spinal surgery, and sometimes spinal surgery involves the nerves, and the nerves aren't healthy and they need time to regenerate. And I had no sense of any of this. It all happened so quickly. So for me, it was the discovery that I had to go to this facility and I was really impaired and was in a wheelchair and then made my way through all the way up to we'll talk about that in a second, but was impaired and had no idea that it was going to take me that long to get better.
And so I work at a Negev Nachater, and we have a rehab hospital, which you've actually been involved in helping some of the development work around that. Had you understood what the concept of a rehabilitation hospital was before this talk with the social worker? What were your first impressions of this entire world, which people aren't necessarily so privy to? You think, hospital, you think of an ER and an OR and all these things, and a maternity ward and all these things, but a rehab hospital is its own world that not everyone is so exposed to. So did you know anything previously about? I mean, I guess maybe a D-negative was before, but tell me a little bit about your first impressions from the inside of a rehab ward.
I want to just take a step back and saying that I have lived an incredibly blessed life. Hashem's been looking out for me. I've never had these kinds of issues in the past personally. Certainly, my family members have been in the hospital and in rehabilitation centers, but they were older or they were dealing with issues of being a senior citizen, not actually having to deal with it at a time of kind of full capabilities. I'm in my mid 50s. Like, what am I doing in a rehab hospital? So I had visited at DNEGEV. It's an amazing place. Visited other rehabilitation hospitals in America. I don't think I had any impression what to expect. I really didn't. And I think that was part of the challenge. I keep a little poster by my office here that was a quote that I saw. And, sometimes you go to a coffee shop and there's they put a quote on the register and it's like, be kind. And it's like Gandhi. So the sign said, I ruin everything. And underneath it said expectation. I think very quickly going into the rehab center, I had to get rid of all my expectations because I had no idea what was going on. I had really no idea what the journey was going to look like. And, my Hebrew's terrible, right? So not really having a sense of even how to ask a lot of questions, but also just every time I asked a question about what was going to happen, the feedback was everybody's journey is different. Well, that's not a good answer if you're looking for certainty. So that was what I had to wrestle with when I first got there.
And just being there alongside, you mentioned before, the victims of October 7th, soldiers from October 7th, and the ensuing weeks afterwards. Did you feel at all inferior? Here you have these tremendous heroes or people who are maybe being interviewed for the news, and you're there with a pedestrian non-October 7th injury. Did you feel different? I just, reminds me of a conversation we had with the Yehuda Helpert, who he was talking about being a shulrav during October 7th, comparing it to being a shulrav during COVID, where people have these personal issues and they feel a little guilty about having a personal issue in a time where the nation or the world is in crisis.
I mean, 1,000,000%. I was very lucky in that I had care. There were people who woke up every day thinking about how to make me feel better and how to improve me, how to give me the physical, the mental therapy I needed to improve. So let's just full stop. I'm just so grateful to everybody who worked in that facility. At Reut, we didn't have any soldiers. We did have one individual who was a hero of one of the communities in the South, was the head of the community security division. I'm going to say it's Alon, but I could be wrong in the name of the community. And he was there and he had been shot and he was sort of our hero on the ward. Most of the soldiers were taken to other places. Most of those involved in October 7th were taken to other places, which was why there was space at Reut because they had sort of carved out Reut as a place for people who were having run of the mill issues, motorcycle accidents, surgery like mine, other things. So, like many people there, we watched the war on Channel 12 because that was the channel that they had on every day. We certainly our hearts were going out to people. We were hearing stories. Our visitors were telling us stories about everything that was happening, and certainly we all had our WhatsApps on. So there was a hero on our ward. This individual I mentioned, he's been written up by a friend of mine in an American magazine because he was amazing. But our focus was really on our own experience.
And so you've already expressed your gratitude multiple times in this conversation. So I want to talk about mindset and attitude and letting go of expectations. How long did it take you to realize that the number one factor, as you referenced me before offline, the number one thing that's going to define this experience for you is going to be what happens in your head, not what happens with any nerves or therapists or facility?
Yeah, I mean, do you ever meet those people who are just electric? I had this guy who was actually my roommate. So I slept in a hospital bed, two to a room with a shared bathroom with two other people. And the very first person who was there with me had been in a motorcycle accident. And his attitude from day one was, I'm going to work harder. I'm gonna smile all the time and I'm gonna do all the exercises, not only when they give them to me, I'm gonna keep doing them all day long. And he was like, I gotta get home. I gotta see my kid. My wife needs me. My job needs me. And I compared him with a lot of other people that I saw in the dining room at our 2.5 meals, 3 meals a day, who just didn't have any of that get up and go and any of that gratitude. This guy had had a really close call and he really took it upon himself to take the most of this opportunity. And so what I learned was watching him and comparing him to others who were in the ward, the power of just being A, thankful, and two, recognizing that the only thing I had control over, literally, was my attitude. Viktor Frankl always talks about how the attitude is really all we can control. We can't control what happens to us. I couldn't have controlled this injury or the surgery. I couldn't control how fast I was going to get better, but what I could control was my attitude. And what I found was the more positivity I put into that, even on the hard days, not in like a fake Pollyanna-ish way, but to just start from a position of gratitude and start from a position of, I'm going to work really hard. And if I work really hard, good things are going to happen. That's what got me through those 3 months.
And can you share what types of experiences or days or feelings were the biggest threat and biggest challenge to applying that positive headspace?
Yeah, I mean, Shabbat was hard. In the rehabilitation hospital, there's no physical therapy on Shabbat. And even Fridays, there's very little. So there's a real 48-hour window where you're left with just a lot of sitting, a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, and in my case, a little bit of learning. And really that's when it's hard because all you can do is your own exercises on your own time. Can't, there isn't a cheerleader, there isn't a physiotherapist or a psychologist or anybody to help you. And you're really left alone in this building with your thoughts. And oftentimes, obviously, my family would come or friends would come and others, but sort of in those moments where there wasn't an army surrounding me saying, let's go to work, an army of therapists and all these other individuals, that was when it was the most difficult.
Wow. So you're there for a total of 90 days you mentioned. What was like the next step after that?
Well, the next after that, thank you. The next step after that was coming home and trying to reintegrate into an amazing life I have. We live in Renata. One of those simple things is my bedroom is on an upper floor and my office where you're talking to me now is in our basement in our mamad. And so even just at the start, going up and down those 2 flights of stairs to the office was a challenge. And in the context, it was also in the challenge of, alarms, bombs coming in from Gaza and other places and having to get up and down those steps even so those were like the little challenges of life. And then some of the other challenges were just finding the right rehabilitation services. It was very easy when they're all you have to do is walk down a hallway to the rehabilitation center. It's a lot harder when you have to go to your health plan, and the health plan you're one of many people. It's not like there's an army of people there to surround you. And it's a lot harder to maintain that positivity, to maintain that sense of 24/7 purpose when really you're back living your daily life and your job is to be a father and a husband and an entrepreneur and all the other ways I define myself and not just to be spending 90 days focusing on getting better.
And you alluded to this before, and you can share whatever you like on this topic, but you mentioned all the professionals that were helping you with different aspects of your recovery. Were you also getting professional help in the mental part of having the motivation and the resilience as well? Or was that something you sort of dealt with on your own and found your own inner strength?
So I've been the beneficiary of mental health professionals for about 20 years, working with some psychoanalysts, working with somatic therapists, reading a lot, talking to a lot of individuals. I spend a lot of time thinking about that. So where my head is at is always a priority. I didn't take advantage of the resources that they provided. There were shrinks or psychologists that I could see, but I was speaking to the woman that I worked with prior to that who was available to me by telephone. And it was really important because, again, new feelings, new challenges, and trying to put them in the context of how do I stay. I was going to say, how do I stay positive? But that's not really what it is. It's how do I stay present with whatever's happening? So if I'm in a grumpy mood or if I'm angry or if, man, my leg today isn't feeling as good as it felt yesterday, how am I thinking about that in terms of just sitting with it right now, as opposed to sort of having an expectation of how it should be? And, the professionals really help with that.
And when we talk about the importance of gratitude, so, many people, their first association with gratitude would be, things are wonderful and we had this tremendous simcha, this tremendous miracle, tremendous success, and we thank God for those wonderful things. But, you probably had to find a different type of gratitude, a small light in a dark night as we experienced on Hanukkah. And the Hanukkah story itself, for those who know, it wasn't exactly a hunky-dory fairy tale ending, and yet it is considered a holiday of praise and thanks. So can you tell us about your sort of how you relearned or renewed your appreciation and your understanding of gratitude during this journey?
Yeah, I think I had a very Pollyannish relationship with gratitude, which was like you said, oh, I've got to be happy all the time. And I think that this experience taught me that the gratitude is actually in just being in the moment and welcoming the moment, whatever it is. Like Hashem had a plan for all this. I didn't. He said, Dan, you're going to spend the next X amount of months wrestling with this, and then you're going to spend part of your life recovering from this. That's all Hashem, right? And so rather than be sort of jumping up and down with gratitude, I think for me, especially going through this experience, gratitude is just recognizing that in this present moment, I'm exactly where Hashem needs me to be. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And these are the challenges in front of me that I'm supposed to be handling and not worrying so much about what's in the past and not worrying so much about what lies ahead.
That's beautiful. Throughout this period, you life continues. You have a family, you have work. I'm assuming it's a little bit different between the inpatient 90 days and the outpatient continuum of care afterwards. But can you tell us, broadly speaking, how you dealt with your work life, professional life? We'll get to family in a second throughout this period.
Well, I mean, I'm so grateful. I have a business partner, an amazing team in California, and it seemed like from the outside they didn't miss a beat, right? I was very clear with them that I was going to be off limits. Like I maybe could do an email every once in a while, but I had to really focus on the care, and they didn't miss a beat. Our clients didn't miss a beat. The team, in a way, sort of when I left California and made Aliyah 8 years ago, the team had to sort of fill in the space and grow. And so a lot of our people have been with us 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. And taking myself out of the mix, being in rehab and going through the surgery, created even more space. And in that space, these individuals who I adore and love and are my friends and my colleagues really stepped up and grew into the moment. And we've just benefited from that ever since.
Amazing. There's a danger in that, meaning I have a Rebbe, a mentor, who once said that a person comes to work in the morning for two reasons. Number one is that they might not survive without him. And number two, they might survive without him. So those, I guess, two shifts of transitions of Aliyah and stepping back during your rehab process, was that at all hard for you, where you realized that maybe, if everyone can survive without you, so then some of the self-importance and self-confidence that you have can be affected at all? Did that come up?
It's probably a whole nother podcast episode, but what I would say is it was the healthiest thing I ever did was getting on that plane. Like most entrepreneurs, my self-worth was tied up entirely with the success of the business. And having gone through the recession in 2008, the challenges around 2016, my own feeling about my own success took pretty big body blows. And so one of the things that making Aliyah did was just put a tiny bit of space, a little bit of pause between me and the success of the business. And that was the healthiest thing that's ever happened. So now I'm very focused on having a successful business. I like what a successful business can not only provide for me and my family, but can help my employees pay off their student loans, buy houses, all those things. Like that's what the business is for. It's an economic engine to help these people I love succeed in whatever it is they want to go to. And that is an enormous sea change from where I was when I started the business, which was this is about me, wave the flag of Dan. Now it's, we have this thing, we do good in the world. It makes money for the people who work at our company and that they can build the lives that they want to live. And so that for me, that little tiny measure of distance created by Aliyah and then created by the surgery, that's the space where all the goodness, all the hodaya comes in.
Amazing. And so, as far as your wonderful family, tell us a little about how it was like for them to go through it, for you to go through it. Again, here my experience is getting to know some of the patients here at DNegev. It's really, the rehab process is certainly a family process. We have developed programs, for the children of injured soldiers to come and get their own therapy and support and family sessions as well. So, tell us a little bit about how you found that process.
Well, I think first and foremost, my little kids liked walking around town saying their dad was in rehab. Like, they just liked that joke, they thought it was funny. Like, my family was amazing. My family, in so many ways picked up the slack. We're an amazing sort of unit and like a little pack. Every family is its own like pack animals. And, I think that I missed being there and I think they missed me being there. But alongside of what was going on, my wife is a venture capital entrepreneur and she was busy. She actually refocused her business during the war to try to, instead of just focus on one area of the economy, she looked at how do I support all these entrepreneurs with the resources they need to make it through the war, but to also find new ways to connect Americans who want to invest in Israeli companies who are inspired by this moment of great challenge and resilience to invest in the country. So she was really focused on keeping our family together, on sort of reformatting and growing her own business enterprise. And my kids were great. I mean, they loved to come visit and such. I think everybody here at our house had to pick up more slack. I'm not saying I carry a lot of slack, but I certainly carry some. And so obviously they had to pick up their own slack.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you told me before is that one of the things that kept you going throughout this process is a project which you had started beforehand, but certainly took on renewed meaning and renewed purpose during your rehab, which is your writing. You've written some incredibly thoughtful divrei Torah. I haven't read all of them, but I've read a bunch of them, and we've collaborated on some. Some of them have Shtark Tank shoutouts. Some have been reshared on the Shtark Tank website. So tell us a little bit about the origins of that, and then how it took on a new dimension during your rehab.
Sure. So we have a family friend who is incredibly humble, so he won't let me mention his name in English. So I'm just going to say Yosef Benjamin Ben Shmuel Zev is the inspiration. So this is an individual who I was the beneficiary of his Torah. He wrote a weekly Devar Torah for his family. And what he would do is he would take the Jonathan Sachs piece of the week and then he would riff on it and build on it and turn it into something that was a way for him to communicate something he wanted to share with his children. He then sent it to, a couple dozen other people, and I was honored to be on that list. So about 2.5 years prior, I started doing the same for our family. And it was an amazing journey. Instead of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, I had learned a bit of Torah from Rabbi Raphael Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, whose name I just messed up. But, his Torah really spoke to me. The moment in time when he was writing, the moment in time that he was experiencing the battle between sort of old and new, the battle between modernity and the Masorah was really sort of powerful for me. So I did the same thing. I'd read through for the week and take an idea that he had, do some research around it, build around it, and then almost have like an asynchronous chavruta with my kids. So I would share an idea from Hirsch. I relate it to maybe a business experience I've had or a personal experience, and then try to draw out the lesson. And this was something that sort of started organically. And then I sort of turned it into okay, on a weekly basis, I'm going to try to do this. And I was able to successfully do 2 cycles through, which included the entire time of surgery and being in rehab. And certainly being in rehab, it gave me something meaningful to work on during the week and to use some of that extra reflection time I had to put it to good use instead of feeling sorry for myself or something else.
That's amazing. And do you have like a favorite idea that came from that period and connected to your experiences rehabbing from an injury, your gratitude that you are learning about and relearning about and renewing your perspective on that you want to share with us?
Well, first of all, before we get into Torah, I just wanted to, if we're going to learn a little bit of Torah, I wanted to just learn that Torah and the merit of my chavruta Daniel Ben Devora, who has been my chavruta for 7 years, who took this little tiny spark of Torah love that I had and helped really fan it into a weekly exercise of just focusing on the 5 books. And I am so grateful for him, and I wish him a speedy recovery from his ongoing challenges. To be candid, I think the idea I just discovered, which was as we were learning about Yaakov. I guess I've always been a Yitzchak guy, right? My Rebbe in America used to sort of say, you're an Avraham, Yitzchak, or Yaakov guy. And I was a Yitzchak guy. I liked institutions. I liked supporting sort of infrastructure. I was involved in our Jewish day school in America. But, Yaakov fights with an angel. And at the end of the fight, he's injured. His leg is injured. Well, boy, that kind of sounds familiar. And so in learning the Parsha, what I learned is he got better. Did you know that he got better? In all my time, I never knew that 18 months later, he sets up in Shechem and he's healed. And Rashi talks about how there's shalem, that he's whole. He's whole from giving away everything he'd given to Esau. He's whole from his physical injury. I got to tell you, I never imagined it would take me 2+ years to heal from this injury, from this surgery, from this challenge. But now looking backward on the 2 years of the journey, the 2.5 years of the journey, I can reflect on the role that my family, that my passion that was nurtured by my friends for Torah has given me. Uh, and the idea that even though I'm trying to stay in the present, if Yaakov can heal and Yaakov can find shalem and Yaakov can be whole, no matter what I've been through, I'm taking away that that's something all of us can see, no matter what the challenge is.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I wanted to touch on two more topics about sort of your injury and some of the things that you've learned. Again, another topic that I've learned about more here at Adi Negev, the idea of accessibility, how we physically design our spaces for people who have a little bit of a harder time, whether it's walking or climbing or stuff like that. What was your experience, in the last 2 years? Do you think that we as society are doing enough to make our physical spaces accessible to people who have different physical challenges? Or, were you obviously grateful for the accessibility that you did need to make use of? How did you summarize your experiences in interacting with airports, offices, apartments, and all these things?
Sure. I want to first say that Rabbi Judah Dardick, who's our rabbi in Oakland, who now teaches at Araita in Jerusalem, he used to talk about Soloveitchik and how Soloveitchik said you can look at the world in many different ways, but you can also look at it through halachic colored glasses. And once you sort of put those glasses on, you see a piece of bread as not just a piece of bread, but a piece of bread is something you're going to elevate and that you're going to sustain the body that Hashem has given you. What I would say is I had to sort of look at the world through a very different set of glasses in terms of accessibility, in terms of what do sidewalks look like, which by the way, in Israel, they're not so great. What do ramps look like? What does our physical infrastructure look like? And it was mind blowing. I work in America with many organizations that do work on behalf of individuals who may have intellectual disabilities or other challenges. And I'll tell you, I don't think I ever got it. And yet we stand on the shoulders of giants who've advocated in America for accessibility, for healthcare access, and other things. And I didn't get it. I'm just going to be fully honest. And now I understand. And so what I would say is, of course, there's a million more things we should be doing. I'm grateful for all the advocacy that people have done. I'm grateful for the stuff that's written into law. But when I was injured, before I even had surgery, trying to get up and down 2 flights of stairs to get to the bomb shelter on October 9th or October 10th or October 11th, it was humiliating. And so I understood just a tiny fraction of what individuals who have lifelong chronic challenges or individuals who are facing challenges in the moment have to wrestle with. And it's humbling and it's just encouraged me to be more vocal wherever I can to promote that kind of access. I'll be very clear. I'm a biker. I love riding my bike. I love an organization called Gears, which gets kids on their bike. But part of what I would do is I would write angry letters to mayors in Israel about how they needed to improve bike path infrastructure, especially here on the sort of coast of the center of the country. But man, I got to tell you, that was meaningless compared to what it means to have accessible physical infrastructure so that everybody can be a meaningful part of society.
Great. And the final question before we go to our lightning round, I don't know if there was anything you would have done differently, but have you learned anything more about back health, back hygiene that you want to recommend to our listeners, people who are sitting in offices all day or do other things that could help them just have better long-term back health based on your experience with a really rough go of it?
The short answer is no. I wouldn't ever I would never encourage anybody to do anything related to their physical health. That's not why you hire me. You hire me to help you with communications challenges, not health challenges. I would encourage everybody to just maintain a healthy lifestyle, whatever that means to you. I would probably say that even if nothing had ever happened. I'm 56 years old. Like stuff works differently. Things break down. You got to take care of yourself. So however individuals along the way would feel comfortable in taking more physical control of their health, I would say to do that. I'd say even more important than the back health. Again, I'll shout out that I've worked with mental health professionals for decades, and it's just been super helpful in understanding my relationships, understanding my relationship with my body, and understanding my relationship with Hashem. So I would just say if you're able to access any of those resources to do it and to do it without any kind of stigma or shame.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for being open about that. I think it's super important. And, we have mutual friends like, Ellie Rothstein and my father and many others who are very much leading the way in this space. And there's a lot of work that has been done, a lot of work still to be done. And I appreciate you shining light on that. And I'm sure it helps people, as we've discussed many times in this conversation, with their physical ailments as well. Do you want me to just give any last thoughts about that mind body connection? My mother also has done a lot of work on this research and helping people in this regard. And it's interesting. I was thinking about it as you were describing, the injury worsening for you after October 7th. And I'm sure, it's very normal. That would have been a very stressful time for everybody. Any other thoughts about the mind body connection, the connection between stress and pain and wellness that you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I think just general mindfulness practice, however you can include it into your life. I'm not a meditator, but I'm a pauser. So, like, I'll take just like a tiny second to pause and to be mindful about where I am and how it's going. And to me, that's the ballgame.
Okay, so we will definitely make sure to hit that pause button here and there, be mindful, be aware, and take care of our mental health, our physical health, and Bezrat Hashem should all bless all of us with continued good health and gratitude. Let's go to our lightning round. 3 short questions, 3 hopefully short answers. We're in the winter. We have these nice long Friday nights. What do you like to do at that time?
Read.
What?
It's either going to be Jewish stuff. I love Torah tidbits. I get to read the Rebbe I never had, which was Rav Moshe Tarragon, who I love and who I listen to online, and I get to read his writing every week. And he's got 2 new books I'm working my way through. Or it's going to involve spaceships and traveling the universe with some kind of science fiction.
Amazing. And when it comes to Parashat Shavua, you mentioned of Hirsch. Is there another book that you like to go to for inspiration and insight on the Parsha?
Yeah, I mean the Rebbe's Chumash is really it's as good as it gets. They make
Is
it
that the
easy.
Gutnick edition?
It's very clear. I'm sorry.
Is that the Gutnick edition?
Yeah, the one with the squishy cover that I love. Yeah.
Got it. Always love a good squishy cover. And finally, if you were forced to leave your job in media, nonprofit communications, social causes, find some other career, some other industry, maybe something you dreamed of doing as a kid, what would that be?
Well, since I can't play second base for the Philadelphia Phillies on the 1980 World Championship team, I'm going to say that it's going to be to open a tequila bar in downtown Renana where I can bring in the finest tequilas from all over the world. And I'm going to call it Tequila Gidola. Insert your dad joke there.
Awesome. Okay. I look forward to one day coming for a L'chaim at Tequila Gdola. Dan, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your energy, your positivity, your gratitude, which comes not just from a place of Pollyannish, but really from a place of understanding that life is hard, but that's okay, and taking life as it comes. So thank you for being a source of positive energy in my life and for sharing it with our listeners as well.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And just onward to many, many more episodes. And thank you to everyone else who's been a guest. I've learned so much from those folks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.